The envelope trembled in my hands as I stood backstage at the grand ballroom of the Century Plaza Hotel. Through the heavy curtains, I could hear the murmur of 3,000 industry professionals, CEOs, creative directors, marketing legends who had shaped campaigns that moved billions of dollars. In 60 seconds, they would call my name. In 60 seconds, I would walk onto that stage to accept the Golden Pixel Award for Digital Marketing Innovation of the Year. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. But 18 months ago, those same people had laughed at me. Not to my face, they were too polite for that. But I heard the snickers, I saw the eye rolls. I watched as my application was pushed aside with barely a glance because it was missing one crucial thing, a college degree. The cursor blinked mockingly on the screen as I stared at the application form for Meridian Creative Agency. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, and I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment in downtown Phoenix, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the glow of 3 monitors displaying my latest freelance projects. The application had been open for 6 hours, but I couldn't bring myself to hit submit. Under education, I had typed and deleted the same line 17 times. High school diploma, Westfield Academy. 2019. No bachelor's degree, no master's, no fancy certificates from prestigious design schools, just a 24-year-old with calloused fingers from years of working construction with my father and an obsession with digital marketing that had kept me awake most nights for the past 3 years. My name is Marcus Chen, and I never thought I'd amount to much more than the kid who mixed concrete and carried lumber. My parents, David and Linda Chen, had immigrated from Taiwan with nothing but determination and a dream of opening their own small construction business. They worked 18-hour days to build Chen Family Construction from the ground up, and they expected me to follow the same path. College was a luxury we couldn't afford, and honestly, sitting in classrooms had never been my thing anyway. But everything changed the day I accidentally stumbled into the world of digital marketing. It was the summer of 2021, and our construction business was struggling. The pandemic had dried up most of our contracts, and my father was spending sleepless nights staring at unpaid invoices and dwindling bank statements. We needed work, desperately. I had been helping him with basic bookkeeping since I turned 18, so I knew exactly how bad things had gotten. One evening, as I watched him hunched over his laptop trying to figure out why our company website wasn't bringing in any leads, something clicked. I had always been good with computers. I was the one who fixed everyone's phones and set up our family's streaming services. Maybe I could figure out this website thing. I started with YouTube tutorials, basic HTML, CSS, search engine optimization. I'd work construction during the day, come home covered in dust and paint, shower and then dive into my laptop until 3 a.m. learning about conversion rates, user experience, and something called marketing funnels. My parents thought I was wasting time. My construction crew buddies thought I was trying to avoid real work, but within 6 months I had completely rebuilt our company website. I learned about local SEO, set up Google My Business properly, and created a content strategy that showcased our work through before and after photo galleries and client testimonials. The results were immediate and dramatic. Chen Family Construction went from getting maybe 1 inquiry per month to receiving 15 to 20 quality leads every week. Our revenue tripled. My father, who had been skeptical of my computer games, suddenly became my biggest supporter. But more importantly, I had discovered something that lit a fire in me, unlike anything I had ever experienced. Every successful campaign felt like solving a complex puzzle. Every conversion rate improvement was like hitting a personal record. I became obsessed with understanding consumer psychology, with testing different headlines, with analyzing data until patterns emerged that others couldn't see. I read everything I could find, marketing blogs, case studies, research papers from universities I would never attend. By early 2022, word had spread through Phoenix's small business community about the construction worker who could work magic with websites. I started taking on freelance projects. Mrs. Rodriguez's bakery saw a 400% increase in online orders after I revamped her digital presence. Thompson Auto Repair's customer base grew so fast, they had to hire 3 additional mechanics. Within 12 months, I was making more money from my evening freelance work than from my day job in construction, but I wanted more. I wanted to work on campaigns that reached millions of people instead of hundreds. I wanted to learn from the best minds in the industry. I wanted to be part of something bigger than local Phoenix businesses. That's when I discovered Meridian Creative Agency. Meridian wasn't just any agency, they were the force behind some of the most memorable campaigns of the past decade. When a struggling coffee chain transformed into a cultural phenomenon with locations in 47 states, that was Meridian. When a small tech startup's viral marketing campaign generated over 50 million social media impressions and led to a successful IPO, that was Meridian. When a nonprofit's awareness campaign changed federal legislation and won 3 international awards, that was Meridian. They were known for hiring only the brightest minds from the most prestigious schools, Harvard MBAs, Stanford design graduates, Northwestern communications majors with perfect GPAs and internships at Fortune 500 companies. Their job postings were legendary for their requirements: minimum 3.8 GPA from accredited 4-year university, advanced degree preferred, fluency in consumer behavioral psychology theory. I didn't meet a single qualification on paper, but I had something else. I had results. Real, measurable, repeatable results with businesses across different industries. I had taken a dying construction company and made it profitable. I had helped a local bakery owner retire early because her business had grown beyond her wildest dreams. I had case studies, testimonials, and data that proved I could do the work. So at 2:47 a.m. on that Tuesday in March, I made a decision that would change everything. I deleted the education section entirely. Instead, I wrote a cover letter that focused purely on results. I detailed every campaign I had ever run, every improvement I had achieved, every dollar in additional revenue I had generated for my clients. I included links to live websites, screenshot comparisons showing before and after metrics, and video testimonials from business owners whose lives I had changed. I attached a portfolio that contained 43 different case studies. Each one showed the original problem, my strategic approach, the implementation process, and the measurable outcomes. I had documentation for everything: conversion rate improvements, traffic increases, revenue growth, customer acquisition costs, lifetime value calculations. At the end of my application, I wrote something that still gives me chills when I remember it. I don't have a degree in marketing, but I have something more valuable: proven ability to move the needle for real businesses with real money on the line. Every campaign I've run has been funded by someone's savings, someone's mortgage payment, someone's retirement fund. There are no participation trophies in small business marketing. Either you generate results, or people lose their livelihoods. I've generated results consistently for 3 years running, and I'm ready to do the same for Meridian's clients. I clicked submit at 3:23 a.m. and immediately felt sick to my stomach. The auto-reply came within minutes. Thank you for your interest in Meridian Creative Agency. Due to the high volume of applications, you can expect to hear back within 2 to 3 weeks regarding next steps. For the next 5 days, I checked my email obsessively. I refreshed my inbox every 10 minutes. I started second-guessing everything. Maybe I should have been more humble. Maybe I should have found a way to get some college credits first. Maybe I was delusional for thinking I could compete with Ivy League graduates. Then, on the following Monday morning, I received an email that made my hands shake. Dear Marcus, thank you for your application to Meridian Creative Agency. After reviewing your submission, we have decided to move forward with other candidates whose backgrounds more closely align with our requirements. We wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. Best regards, Sarah Mitchell, Human Resources Director, Meridian Creative Agency. I read it 3 times before the rejection fully sank in. My first instinct was anger. They hadn't even given me a chance to prove myself. They had dismissed 3 years of real-world success because I was missing a piece of paper. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling discouraged, I felt motivated. I started researching everyone who worked at Meridian. I studied their LinkedIn profiles, read their published articles, watched their conference presentations on YouTube. I analyzed every campaign they had ever released, breaking down their strategies, identifying their patterns, understanding their creative process. What I discovered surprised me. Many of their most celebrated campaigns relied on tactics I had already mastered through trial and error. Their award-winning social media strategy for a restaurant chain was nearly identical to an approach I had developed for Mrs. Rodriguez's bakery, just scaled up. Their viral video campaign that generated millions of views used the same psychological triggers I had been implementing in my email sequences. The difference wasn't in the quality of thinking or the sophistication of strategy. The difference was in scale, resources, and industry connections. I realized I needed to find another way in. I started attending every marketing conference, workshop, and networking event I could find within driving distance of Phoenix. I drove to Los Angeles for a 3-day digital marketing summit, sleeping in my car to save money on hotels. I flew to Austin for South by Southwest, maxing out a credit card to afford the registration fee. I showed up at industry meetups in Phoenix, Tucson, and even drove to Denver for a weekend conference on conversion optimization. At every event I had one goal: meet people who worked at agencies like Meridian and prove to them that I belonged in their world. The reactions were predictable. When I introduced myself as a freelancer from Phoenix without a college degree, I could almost see people's mental calculations. They would smile politely, exchange business cards out of courtesy, and then gravitate toward conversations with people who had the right credentials. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off, but occasionally someone would ask about my work instead of my background. Those conversations were different. When I showed them my portfolio, when I walked them through my case studies, when I explained the reasoning behind my strategic decisions, their attitudes shifted. Several agency directors told me I had a natural intuition for consumer psychology that couldn't be taught in classrooms. One conversation in particular changed everything. I was at a conference in San Diego called The Future of Digital Engagement, sitting alone at a bar after the first day of presentations. The conference had been expensive, and I was nursing a single beer to make it last, reviewing my notes from the day's sessions. A woman sat down next to me and ordered a whiskey neat. She was probably in her early 50s, with silver hair and the kind of confident presence that suggested she was someone important in the industry. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, she glanced over at my notebook. "Interesting observations about the personalization panel," she said, nodding toward my scribbled notes. "I noticed you were asking good questions during the Q&A." Her name was Victoria Hartman, and she was the Chief Marketing Officer at Pinnacle Digital, one of Meridian's biggest competitors. We talked for 2 hours about everything from attribution modeling to the psychology of color in call-to-action buttons. She didn't ask about my education once. She was more interested in my opinions about emerging trends in artificial intelligence and marketing automation. Near the end of our conversation, she said something that stayed with me. "The industry is changing faster than universities can keep up. The most valuable marketers aren't the ones with the best grades. They're the ones who can adapt, test, and generate results in real time. Book knowledge is becoming less relevant every day." When I told her about my rejection from Meridian, she laughed. "Their loss," she said. "Traditional agencies are still stuck in the old way of thinking. They hire based on pedigree instead of performance, but that approach is becoming obsolete." Victoria gave me her business card and told me to stay in touch. She also mentioned something that planted a seed in my mind. "You know, there are other ways to get industry recognition besides working at famous agencies. The Golden Pixel Awards are coming up in 18 months. Have you ever considered entering your work?" I had heard of the Golden Pixel Awards, of course. They were the most prestigious recognition in digital marketing, often called the Oscars of advertising. Campaigns that won Golden Pixels were studied in marketing textbooks and MBA programs. The awards ceremony was attended by the top minds in the industry from around the world, but I had never considered that someone like me could enter. I assumed it was reserved for big agencies with massive budgets and celebrity clients. Victoria must have seen the doubt in my expression. "Look at the submission requirements sometime," she said. "They judge based on innovation, results, and impact. They don't care if you went to Harvard or if you're working out of your garage." That night, I went back to my hotel room and spent hours reading through the Golden Pixel Awards submission guidelines. Victoria was right. Nowhere did they ask about education, agency affiliation, or budget size. They wanted to see creative solutions that solve real problems and generate measurable results. I started thinking about my work with new eyes. Maybe my campaigns weren't famous, but they had transformed lives. Mrs. Rodriguez had been able to expand her bakery and hire 6 employees. Thompson Auto Repair had grown from a 2-person operation to a thriving business with 12 mechanics and a waiting list of customers. Chen Family Construction had gone from near bankruptcy to being booked solid for 8 months in advance. Real businesses, real people, real impact. Over the next several months, I continued taking on freelance projects but with a new focus. I started documenting everything more meticulously. I measured not just revenue improvements and traffic increases, but also the human impact of my campaigns. I interviewed my clients about how the business growth had changed their lives, their employees' lives, their communities. One project in particular started to stand out as something special. In September of that year, I was approached by a nonprofit organization called Desert Hope Foundation. They worked with homeless veterans in the Phoenix area, providing job training, temporary housing, and mental health support. Their founder, a former Marine named Robert Torres, had been running the organization on a shoestring budget for 5 years with minimal visibility and constant fundraising struggles. Robert had heard about my work through Mrs. Rodriguez, whose nephew was a veteran who had been helped by Desert Hope. He came to my apartment on a Saturday morning with a challenge that seemed impossible. They needed to raise $500,000 in 6 months to keep their programs running, and their previous fundraising efforts had never generated more than $30,000 in an entire year. Traditional marketing wisdom would have said it couldn't be done. Their brand was unknown outside of a small circle of local veterans. They had no celebrity endorsements, no major corporate partnerships, no wealthy board members with deep connections. But I saw an opportunity that others had missed. I spent weeks interviewing veterans who had been through Desert Hope's programs. I heard story after story of transformation. Men and women who had gone from sleeping in their cars to landing stable jobs, from battling addiction to becoming mentors for other veterans, from isolation and despair to rebuild relationships with their families. These weren't just statistics. These were powerful, authentic human stories that could move people to action if told properly. I developed a comprehensive digital campaign that I called Road Home. The strategy was built around long-form storytelling that followed specific veterans through their entire journey with Desert Hope. Instead of asking for donations up front, we invited people to follow these stories over time, building emotional investment before making any requests for support. We launched with a series of mini documentaries that I filmed and edited myself. Each one followed a different veteran for 30 days, showing their daily routine, their struggles, their small victories, and their progress. The production quality wasn't Hollywood level, but the authenticity was undeniable. I optimized every piece of content for maximum emotional impact while maintaining complete honesty. No manipulation, no false urgency, no guilt tactics, just real stories told with respect and dignity. The results exceeded everyone's expectations, including my own. Within 60 days, our video content had been viewed over 2 million times across all platforms. Local news stations picked up the stories. National veterans organizations shared our content. We received messages from veterans in other states who wanted to know if similar programs existed in their areas. More importantly, we raised $847,000 in 5.5 months, but the impact went beyond fundraising. 3 other cities reached out to Robert about establishing Desert Hope programs in their areas. A major corporation offered to sponsor job training programs nationally. The campaign generated enough awareness to secure ongoing government funding that would sustain the organization for years to come. When I looked at the data 6 months later, I realized we had created something remarkable. Not just a successful campaign, but a model for how digital marketing could be used to solve real social problems. We had proven that authentic storytelling, combined with strategic distribution and optimization, could generate massive impact even with limited resources. I knew I had found my Golden Pixel submission. The Golden Pixel Awards submission deadline was February 15th, and I had exactly 4 months to compile everything into a presentation that could compete with campaigns from agencies that spent more on coffee than I made in a year. But I had something they didn't, a story that proved marketing could change lives, not just sell products. Working on the submission consumed every free moment I had. During the day, I continued running my freelance business, but every evening and weekend was dedicated to crafting what I knew would be the most important presentation of my career. I converted my small apartment into a makeshift production studio, with whiteboards covering every wall and printouts of data visualizations taped to every surface. The submission requirements were comprehensive. Beyond the basic campaign overview, they wanted detailed strategy documentation, complete performance metrics, creative assets, and a 15-minute video presentation explaining the innovation and impact. Most agencies assigned entire teams to Golden Pixel submissions. I was doing it alone, armed with nothing but determination and the belief that authentic impact would speak louder than polished presentations. I started with the data. Numbers don't lie, and the Desert Hope campaign had generated numbers that seemed almost unbelievable. In addition to the $847,000 raised, We had achieved a cost per acquisition that was 340% better than industry benchmarks for nonprofit campaigns. Our video content had an average watch time of 12.7 minutes in an era when most social media videos lose viewers after 8 seconds. Our email sequences had open rates of 67% and click-through rates of 31%, metrics that would make even seasoned email marketing specialists jealous. But data alone wouldn't win a golden pixel. The judges were looking for innovation, creativity, and campaigns that pushed the industry forward. I needed to articulate what made our approach fundamentally different from traditional nonprofit marketing. The breakthrough came when I was reviewing footage from one of our mini-documentaries. I was watching an interview with a veteran named Michael Santos, who had gone through Desert Hope's program 18 months earlier. In the video, he was talking about his first job interview after being homeless for 2 years. He mentioned how nervous he had been, how he had practiced his answers in the mirror for hours, how he had borrowed a suit from another veteran in the program. What struck me wasn't just his story, but the way his face lit up when he talked about helping other veterans prepare for their own interviews. He had become a mentor, a living example that transformation was possible. Our campaign hadn't just raised money, it had created a self-sustaining community of support. That's when I realized what made our campaign truly innovative. We hadn't just told stories to generate donations. We had created a platform that turned beneficiaries into advocates, supporters into community members, and donors into long-term stakeholders. We had built something that would continue generating impact long after the campaign ended. I restructured my entire submission around this insight. The innovation wasn't in any single tactic we had used, it was in how we had reimagined the relationship between nonprofit organizations and their communities. Instead of the traditional model where organizations ask for help and supporters provide money, we had created an ecosystem where everyone was both a giver and a receiver. The creative assets were equally important. I spent weeks editing together a highlight reel that captured the emotional journey of our campaign without being manipulative. I included behind-the-scenes footage of my interviews with veterans, raw moments that showed the genuine human connections that had made everything possible. I documented my own learning process, showing how I had adapted traditional marketing techniques to respect the dignity of people who were struggling. One section of the video showed me in Robert Torres's office, surrounded by thank you letters from veterans and their families. As I read some of them aloud, the camera captured both of us getting emotional. These weren't actors or staged moments. This was the real impact of work that had started as a marketing challenge and evolved into something much more meaningful. The hardest part of the submission was the strategy documentation. How do you explain intuition? How do you document the hundreds of small decisions that had made the difference between success and failure? I ended up creating a detailed timeline that showed not just what we had done, but why we had made each decision and how we had measured its effectiveness. I revealed techniques that I had never shared with anyone, the psychological principles I had discovered through trial and error, the data analysis methods I had developed to predict which stories would resonate most strongly, the community management strategies that had turned casual supporters into passionate advocates. By January, I was working 18-hour days to meet the submission deadline. My savings account was nearly empty because I had turned down several lucrative freelance projects to focus entirely on the Golden Pixel application. My parents were worried that I was becoming obsessed with something that would never pay off. My construction crew buddies thought I had completely lost touch with reality. But I knew this was my chance to prove that success in marketing wasn't about having the right degree or working at the right agency. It was about understanding people, solving real problems, and generating measurable impact. I submitted my Golden Pixel application at 11:47 p.m. on February 14th, 13 minutes before the deadline. The submission portal confirmed receipt with a simple message, "Thank you for your entry." Winners will be announced at the Golden Pixel Awards ceremony on September 22nd. 7 months to wait. 7 months of wondering if I had made a complete fool of myself by competing against campaigns with budgets larger than most small businesses' annual revenue. But I didn't spend those 7 months sitting around. I used the momentum from the Desert Hope success to land the biggest client of my career up to that point, a regional healthcare system called Southwest Medical Group. Southwest Medical had been struggling with patient acquisition in an increasingly competitive market. They had 12 locations across Arizona and New Mexico, but their marketing was fragmented and ineffective. Each location was essentially running its own advertising with no coordination or consistent messaging. They were spending $400,000 annually on various marketing efforts and getting terrible results. The CMO, a woman named Dr. Patricia Williams, had heard about my work through connections in the Phoenix business community. She was skeptical about hiring a freelancer without a degree to handle marketing for a healthcare system with annual revenue of $120 million, but she was desperate enough to give me a chance to present my ideas. I spent 3 weeks preparing for that presentation. I analyzed their current marketing efforts, identified the gaps and opportunities, and developed a comprehensive strategy that would unify their messaging while respecting the unique characteristics of each location. The key insight was that Southwest Medical's patients weren't choosing healthcare providers based on medical credentials. Those were assumed to be excellent. They were choosing based on trust, convenience, and whether they felt like the provider understood their specific needs and concerns. I proposed a campaign called Your Health, Your Community that would position Southwest Medical as the healthcare partner that understood local communities because they were part of those communities. Instead of generic health tips and corporate messaging, we would share stories of real patients, feature local physicians in their home communities, and create content that addressed the specific health concerns most relevant to each geographic area. Dr. Williams was intrigued but cautious. Healthcare marketing is heavily regulated, and one mistake could result in legal problems and damaged reputation. She agreed to a 3-month pilot program with a limited budget and strict oversight. The results from the pilot were extraordinary. Patient inquiries increased by 180% in the test markets. More importantly, the quality of inquiries improved dramatically. People weren't just calling to ask about services, they were specifically mentioning things they had seen in our content, asking for particular physicians they had learned about, and expressing genuine enthusiasm about choosing Southwest Medical for their healthcare needs. Dr. Williams expanded the program to all 12 locations and tripled my budget. Over the next 6 months, Southwest Medical saw the most successful patient acquisition period in their history. They had to hire additional staff at 3 locations to handle increased demand. Patient satisfaction scores improved because people were coming in with realistic expectations and genuine connection to their chosen providers. But more than the business results, I was proud of how the campaign had strengthened the connection between Southwest Medical and their communities. We had created content that actually helped people make better health decisions, not just convinced them to choose one provider over another. By July, word was spreading through the healthcare marketing industry about the campaign. I received inquiries from medical groups in other states who wanted to implement similar strategies. I was invited to speak at 2 healthcare marketing conferences. A trade publication called Healthcare Marketing Today featured Southwest Medical's campaign as their cover story, with a sidebar about the unconventional consultant who had developed the strategy. The professional recognition felt amazing, but it also created an unexpected problem. I was getting more work opportunities than I could handle as a solo freelancer. I was turning down projects worth $50,000 because I didn't have the capacity to serve them properly. I made a decision that scared me. I decided to build a team. In August, I hired my first employee, a recent college graduate named Jessica Martinez, who had studied communications at Arizona State University. Jessica was smart, motivated, and eager to learn, but she had 0 real-world marketing experience. I spent weeks training her on everything I had discovered through years of trial and error. What I learned from teaching Jessica surprised me. Many of the techniques I had developed intuitively, I had never articulated clearly even to myself. Being forced to explain my decision-making process to someone else helped me understand my own methods more deeply. I started documenting everything we did, creating systems and processes that would allow us to scale without sacrificing quality. By September, we were a team of 3. In addition to Jessica, I had hired a part-time video editor named Carlos Rivera, who helped us produce content more efficiently. We were working out of a small office space in downtown Phoenix that I rented month to month, still uncertain about whether this growth was sustainable. Then, on September 10th, I received the email that changed everything. Dear Marcus Chen, congratulations. Your submission Road Home Transforming Nonprofit Engagement Through Authentic Community Building has been selected as a finalist for the Golden Pixel Award for Digital Marketing Innovation of the Year. The award ceremony will be held on September 22nd at the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles. You are invited to attend as our guest, with all expenses covered by the Golden Pixel Foundation. Whether or not you win the award, being selected as a finalist is a significant achievement. Only 12 campaigns were chosen from over 3,000 submissions worldwide. We look forward to seeing you in Los Angeles. Best regards, Amanda Foster, Executive Director, Golden Pixel Foundation. I read the email 7 times before I believed it was real. Then I called Jessica and Carlos into the office and read it to them. We spent the rest of the day in a state of shocked excitement, trying to process what this meant for our little agency that had started in my apartment just months earlier. Being a finalist was already more recognition than I had ever imagined receiving. The other 11 finalists were campaigns from agencies I had studied and admired for years. Meridian Creative Agency, the same company that had rejected my application, had 2 campaigns in the finalist list. But I wasn't satisfied with just being a finalist. I had come too far and worked too hard to be content with participation. I wanted to win. The awards ceremony was 11 days away. I used every one of those days to prepare for the possibility that I might be called to the stage. I wrote and rewrote acceptance speeches. I practiced in front of the mirror until I could deliver my key points without notes. I researched everyone who would be in attendance, from the judges to the presenters to the other finalists. Most importantly, I prepared myself mentally for both outcomes. If I won, I wanted to be ready to represent not just my own work, but everyone who had ever been told they weren't qualified because of their background. If I didn't win, I wanted to be gracious and use the networking opportunity to continue building relationships in the industry. Jessica and Carlos insisted on coming with me to Los Angeles, paying their own way because they wanted to be there for the announcement. We flew out on September 21st and checked into a hotel near the Century Plaza. I spent the evening walking around Beverly Hills, trying to calm my nerves and prepare for what would either be the best or most disappointing night of my professional life. The next morning, I put on the best suit I had ever owned, purchased specifically for this occasion, and headed to the venue where my entire career would be validated or remain a footnote in an industry dominated by people with very different backgrounds than mine. The Century Plaza Hotel ballroom was more intimidating than I had imagined. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows across tables set with fine china and premium linens. 3,000 of the industry's most influential professionals filled the space, their conversations creating a sophisticated hum that spoke of million-dollar deals and campaigns that shaped global culture. I sat at table 47 with Jessica and Carlos, feeling simultaneously out of place and exactly where I belonged. Around us, creative directors from legendary agencies exchanged business cards and discussed their latest campaigns. These were people whose work I had studied, whose strategies I had analyzed, whose success I had used as benchmarks for my own growth. The irony wasn't lost on me. 18 months earlier, many of these same people would have dismissed me without a second thought. Tonight, I was competing directly against their most celebrated work. The ceremony began with a presentation by the Golden Pixel Foundation's president, highlighting the evolution of digital marketing over the past decade. She spoke about how the industry was becoming more data-driven, more personalized, more focused on authentic engagement rather than traditional advertising techniques. This year's finalists represent the cutting edge of our industry, she announced. They demonstrate that innovation comes not from following established formulas, but from understanding human behavior at a deeper level and creating genuine connections between brands and communities. Awards were presented in ascending order of prestige, starting with specialized categories like Best Use of Emerging Technology and Excellence in Data Visualization. Each winner walked to the stage accompanied by polite applause and brief presentations of their achievements. I watched carefully, studying how each winner carried themselves, how they delivered their acceptance speeches, how they acknowledged their teams and clients. Some were polished and corporate, others more casual and personal. All of them belonged in this room in ways that I was still learning to embrace. As the evening progressed toward the major categories, my nervousness intensified. The Digital Marketing Innovation of the Year award would be presented near the end of the ceremony, just before the overall Campaign of the Year recognition. During a brief intermission, I stepped outside for fresh air and found myself face-to-face with Sarah Mitchell, the HR director from Meridian Creative Agency, who had sent my rejection letter. She was talking with 2 other executives, but when she saw me, she paused mid-sentence. "Excuse me," she said, approaching with a puzzled expression. "You look familiar. Have we met?" "Marcus Chen," I replied, extending my hand. "You sent me a rejection letter about 18 months ago." Her face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, embarrassment, and finally something that might have been respect. "You're the Desert Hope Campaign finalist," she said. "I read the case study. Impressive work." "Thank you," I replied simply. "I have to ask," she continued, Did our rejection motivate you to enter the Golden Pixels? I thought about her question carefully. Your rejection taught me that I needed to prove my value through results rather than credentials. In a way, it was exactly the push I needed. She nodded thoughtfully. We get thousands of applications. Sometimes we miss talented people because we're focused on traditional qualifications. She paused, then added, we'd be interested in discussing opportunities if you're ever looking for agency partnership. The conversation was cordial but brief. As I walked back into the ballroom, I realized that winning or losing the award had become secondary to something more important. I had already proven to myself and to the industry that unconventional backgrounds could produce exceptional results. The ceremony resumed with the presentation of the Digital Marketing Innovation Award. The presenter, a veteran CMO from a Fortune 100 company, began by discussing how innovation in marketing required both creative vision and analytical rigor. This year's finalists each demonstrated unique approaches to solving complex marketing challenges, he explained. They combined emerging technologies with deep understanding of human psychology to create campaigns that didn't just achieve business objectives, they created lasting impact for communities and causes. He began announcing the finalists, displaying brief video summaries of each campaign on large screens throughout the ballroom. I watched as sophisticated campaigns from major agencies were presented with impressive production values and comprehensive metrics. When my turn came, the screen filled with footage from the Desert Hope mini-documentaries. Veterans sharing their stories, community members volunteering their time, families reuniting after periods of struggle and growth. The presenter read a summary of our results, but what struck me most was the authentic emotion visible on people's faces as they watched our content. The Road Home campaign demonstrates that innovation in marketing isn't always about new technologies or complex strategies, the presenter continued. Sometimes it's about remembering that behind every metric is a human being with real needs, real dreams, and real potential for transformation. The finalist presentations concluded, and the presenter opened the envelope containing the winner's name. The ballroom fell silent except for the quiet clinking of glasses and silverware. The Golden Pixel Award for Digital Marketing Innovation of the Year goes to, he paused, scanning the audience, Marcus Chen and team for the Road Home campaign. The words hit me like a physical force. Jessica grabbed my arm. Carlos started cheering, and applause erupted throughout the ballroom. I stood up on unsteady legs, straightened my jacket, and began the longest walk of my life toward the stage. As I climbed the steps, I caught glimpses of faces in the audience. Some were applauding enthusiastically, others looked surprised. A few seemed to be reassessing everything they thought they knew about who could succeed in this industry. Near the back, I saw Victoria Hartman, the CMO who had encouraged me to enter the competition. She was standing and clapping with obvious pride. I accepted the award, a beautiful crystal sculpture that reflected the stage lights in dozens of brilliant colors, and approached the microphone. The applause died down, and I found myself looking out at 3,000 industry professionals waiting to hear what I had to say. When I started my first marketing campaign 3 years ago, it wasn't because I wanted to win awards or build an agency or prove anything to anyone. It was because my family's construction business was failing, and I thought maybe I could figure out how to get more customers through our website. Light laughter rippled through the audience. I learned marketing the way most small business owners learn it, through necessity, trial and error, and a lot of late nights wondering if I was completely crazy for thinking I could compete with people who actually knew what they were doing. More laughter, warmer this time. But what I discovered is that marketing isn't really about degrees or agencies or budgets. It's about understanding people, what they need, what they fear, what they hope for, and how you can genuinely help them get from where they are to where they want to be. I looked out at the audience and saw people nodding, leaning forward, genuinely engaged with what I was saying. The Desert Hope campaign succeeded not because we had innovative technology or unlimited resources, but because we treated every veteran's story with the respect and dignity it deserved. We remembered that behind every click, every conversion, every donation was a real person making a real decision about something that mattered to them. I paused, collecting my thoughts for the conclusion. This award doesn't belong just to me. It belongs to Robert Torres and everyone at Desert Hope Foundation who trusted a construction worker with no formal marketing education to tell their story. It belongs to every veteran who shared their journey with strangers on the internet because they believed it might help someone else. It belongs to every small business owner who takes a chance on strategies that don't fit traditional models because they know their customers deserve better. I held up the award. And it belongs to everyone who's ever been told they're not qualified for something they know they can do. Your background doesn't determine your potential, your results do. The applause was sustained and enthusiastic. As I walked off the stage, I felt something I had never experienced before: complete confidence in my place in this industry, and excitement about what we could accomplish next. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, business card exchanges, and conversations with people who wanted to learn more about our approach to community-centered marketing. Several agency directors approached me about partnership opportunities. 3 nonprofit organizations asked if we could help them with similar campaigns. But the most meaningful conversation came from an unexpected source. A young woman about my age approached me near the end of the evening. She introduced herself as Maria Santos, a recent college graduate who had been working as an assistant at a major advertising agency. "I have a marketing degree from UCLA," she said, "but I've learned more about effective marketing from studying your campaign than I did in 4 years of classes. Would you consider hiring someone who has credentials but wants to learn how to actually generate results?" I smiled, thinking about how far I had come from the nervous freelancer submitting applications in the middle of the night. "Let's talk," I said. 6 months after the Golden Pixel ceremony, I was standing in the conference room of our new office space in downtown Phoenix, looking out at a team of 12 people who had joined what we now called Authentic Impact Marketing. The Crystal Award sat on a shelf behind my desk, but it had become less of a trophy and more of a reminder of the responsibility that came with unexpected recognition. The months following the award had been a whirlwind that challenged everything I thought I knew about business growth. Within a week of the ceremony, we received over 200 inquiries from organizations wanting to work with us. Major corporations, established nonprofits, healthcare systems, and even government agencies reached out asking if we could replicate the success of the Desert Hope campaign for their causes. The attention was flattering but overwhelming. I quickly realized that scaling authentic marketing wasn't as simple as hiring more people and taking on more clients. The approach that had made our campaign successful required deep understanding of each organization's community, careful relationship building, and creative strategies tailored to specific human needs. It couldn't be mass-produced or templated. Maria Santos, the UCLA graduate who had approached me at the awards ceremony, became our head of strategy development. Her academic background combined with genuine enthusiasm for community-focused marketing made her invaluable in documenting our processes and training new team members. Together we developed a framework we called Human-First Marketing that prioritized authentic connection over traditional conversion metrics. Our first major challenge came from an unexpected source: success itself. A Fortune 500 technology company offered us a $2 million contract to handle their corporate social responsibility campaigns. The money would have instantly solved every financial concern for our growing agency, but the project felt wrong from the beginning. During initial meetings, it became clear that they wanted to use our reputation for authentic community engagement to improve their public image without making meaningful changes to their business practices. They had been criticized for labor conditions in their overseas factories and wanted a marketing campaign that would shift public attention to their charitable donations and environmental initiatives. After 3 weeks of discussions, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. I turned down the contract. "We don't do reputation washing," I told their CMO during our final meeting. "If you want to improve your public image, improve your business practices, then we can help you tell that story authentically." The decision cost us the biggest payday in our company's history, but it established something more valuable: clear principles about the type of work we would and wouldn't accept. Word spread quickly through the industry that authentic impact marketing would walk away from lucrative contracts if they conflicted with our values. Paradoxically, this reputation for integrity brought us better clients. Organizations that were genuinely committed to positive impact sought us out specifically because they knew we wouldn't compromise authentic messaging for financial gain. Our second major campaign came from an unexpected partnership with the Phoenix Public School District. Superintendent Dr. Angela Richardson had seen our Desert Hope work and wanted to address a crisis that traditional public relations approaches had failed to solve: declining community support for public education funding. Arizona had some of the lowest per-pupil education spending in the nation, and several ballot initiatives to increase school funding had failed despite strong support from educators and parents. The problem wasn't lack of community caring. it was lack of understanding about how underfunding directly affected children's daily educational experiences. Dr. Richardson gave us access to schools throughout the district, with one requirement: everything we documented had to be completely truthful, even if it revealed problems the district would prefer to keep private. We spent 2 months in classrooms, following teachers and students through their daily routines. We documented overcrowded classrooms where 32 students shared textbooks meant for 20. We filmed art classes that had been canceled due to budget cuts, leaving talented students with no creative outlet during school hours. We interviewed teachers who spent their own money on basic supplies and worked second jobs to afford their own children's education. But we also captured moments of incredible resilience and innovation. Teachers creating engaging lessons with minimal resources, students helping each other succeed despite systemic challenges, principals finding creative solutions to support their communities despite budget constraints. The campaign we developed, called Behind the Numbers, showed the human reality behind educational statistics. Instead of asking voters to support abstract funding measures, we helped them understand how their neighbors, teachers, students, and families were directly affected by current policy decisions. The content strategy was built around transparency and respect. We didn't hide problems or exaggerate successes. We simply showed what was actually happening in Phoenix schools and let community members draw their own conclusions about whether they wanted to support change. The campaign launched 3 months before the November election. Within 6 weeks, we had generated over 4 million local video views and received coverage from every major news outlet in Arizona. More importantly, we had facilitated hundreds of conversations between community members and educators about practical solutions to funding challenges. The ballot measure passed with 64% support, the highest margin for an education funding initiative in Arizona's history. But the real success came in the months that followed, as increased community engagement led to more parent volunteers, additional business partnerships, and ongoing dialogue about educational priorities. The Phoenix Schools campaign caught national attention and led to invitations from districts in 12 other states. Educational advocacy organizations began studying our approach as a model for building sustainable community support. By this point, we had established patterns that set us apart from traditional marketing agencies. We spent significantly more time in research and relationship building than most agencies considered profitable. We measured success not just through immediate campaign results, but through long-term community impact. We turned down more projects than we accepted, focusing on organizations where we could create meaningful change. This approach attracted team members who shared our values. Dr. James Kim, a former nonprofit executive with expertise in social psychology, joined as our director of community research. Sandra Williams, a documentary filmmaker who had worked with National Geographic, became our creative director. Each new hire brought specialized skills but also genuine passion for using marketing as a force for positive social change. Our growth attracted attention from larger agencies looking to acquire companies with strong community-focused capabilities. Meridian Creative Agency, the same company that had rejected my original application, approached us about a potential merger that would have made me a senior partner in their organization. The offer was generous and would have provided immediate access to resources and clients that would take us years to develop independently, but after a week of consideration, I declined. 2 years ago, I would have been thrilled just to get a job at Meridian. I told their CEO during our final meeting, but we've built something here that can't be replicated within a traditional agency structure. Our effectiveness comes from our independence and our ability to say no to projects that don't align with our mission. Instead of acquisition, we began developing partnerships with agencies that wanted to incorporate community-focused strategies into their work. We created consulting services that help traditional agencies develop more authentic approaches to social impact campaigns. This model allowed us to influence industry practices without compromising our core values. The most rewarding project of our second year came from an unexpected source: my father's construction company. Chen Family Construction had continued growing since our original website improvements, but my father wanted to expand into sustainable building practices. He asked if we could help him transition the business toward environmental responsibility while maintaining profitability. Working with my family's business again reminded me of why I had gotten into marketing in the first place. We developed a campaign that documented Chen Family Construction's journey toward sustainable practices, showing the challenges and learning process rather than presenting themselves as environmental experts. The transparency resonated with both residential and commercial clients, who wanted to support environmentally conscious businesses but appreciated honesty about the complexities of implementation. Within 18 months, Chen Family Construction had become one of Phoenix's leading sustainable building contractors. More personally, the project repaired some family relationships that had been strained during my transition away from construction work. My parents finally understood that my career in marketing wasn't a rejection of their values, but an extension of them solving real problems for real people through honest work and genuine service. As I stood in our conference room that morning, reviewing the year ahead with our team, I reflected on how much had changed since I had submitted that first job application to Meridian. We had grown from a solo freelancer to an agency with national recognition, but more importantly, we had proven that business success and social impact weren't mutually exclusive. The Golden Pixel Award had opened doors, but what sustained our growth was consistent delivery of results that mattered to communities rather than just clients. We had developed a reputation for campaigns that created lasting change, not just temporary engagement. Jessica, now our operations director, updated the team on our current projects, a campaign with a coalition of community health centers, a partnership with environmental organizations in 3 Western states, and a project helping rural communities attract sustainable economic development. Each project represented months of relationship building, careful research, and creative problem-solving that went far beyond traditional marketing scope. But each also represented opportunities to prove that authentic community engagement could drive both social change and business success. The kid who had mixed concrete and carried lumber had built something that none of us could have imagined 5 years earlier. Not just a successful business, but a model for how marketing could serve human dignity while achieving organizational goals. The award had been recognition of past achievement, but the work we were doing now was building towards something larger, an industry that measured success by the positive impact it created in people's lives, not just the profits it generated for clients. That measurement, I knew, would matter long after any award had been forgotten. 3 years after winning the Golden Pixel Award, I faced the biggest crisis of my career, one that threatened to destroy everything we had built and forced me to question whether success had made me lose sight of the principles that got me here. It started with what seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime. The White House Office of Digital Strategy reached out through intermediaries, asking if Authentic Impact Marketing would be interested in consulting on a national campaign to increase civic engagement among young adults. Voter turnout among 18 to 24-year-olds had reached historic lows, and traditional government outreach efforts had failed to connect with this demographic. The project would be nonpartisan, focused purely on encouraging democratic participation, rather than supporting any particular candidate or policy position. The budget was substantial, $15 million over 18 months, and the potential impact was enormous. If successful, we could help reverse decades of declining civic engagement and strengthen democratic institutions. More personally, it represented validation that our community-focused approach had gained recognition at the highest levels of government. From the kid who couldn't afford college to a White House consultant in less than 5 years, it seemed like the ultimate proof that merit could triumph over credentials. I assembled a team of our best strategists and spent 6 weeks developing a comprehensive proposal. We recommended an approach called Democracy in Real Life that would show young adults how government decisions directly affected their daily experiences, from student loan policies to job market regulations to environmental standards that impacted their health and future. Instead of lecturing about civic duty, we would create content that helped young people understand the connection between voting and outcomes they cared about. We would partner with influencers who genuinely engaged with political issues, not celebrities reading scripted messages. We would focus on local elections where individual votes carried more weight and results were more visible. The proposal was accepted with enthusiasm, and we signed contracts that would triple our agency's revenue for the next year and a half. Our team was excited about the potential impact, and I felt proud that we had been chosen for such an important mission. The problems began almost immediately. Within 2 weeks of starting the project, I received a call from Deputy Director Harrison Mitchell, our primary contact in the Office of Digital Strategy. He wanted to discuss message coordination to ensure our content aligned with current administration priorities. During a video conference that felt more like an interrogation than a strategy session, Mitchell presented a list of topics we should emphasize and others we should avoid. The emphasis list included infrastructure spending, healthcare expansion, and climate change initiatives, all policies supported by the current administration. The avoidance list included anything related to immigration, foreign policy, or economic regulations that might be controversial. We want young people engaged in democracy, Mitchell explained, but we also want to ensure they're informed about the positive impact the government can have on their lives. I pushed back immediately. Our effectiveness comes from authenticity. If we're selectively presenting information, we're not encouraging civic engagement, we're creating propaganda. Mitchell's response was polite but firm. We're not asking you to lie or misrepresent anything. We're simply suggesting that some topics are more likely to generate productive civic participation than others. I left the meeting deeply uncomfortable but not yet ready to abandon the project. Maybe we could find ways to maintain authenticity while working within their guidelines. Maybe the positive impact of increased voter turnout would justify some compromise on message independence. I was wrong. Over the next month, every piece of content we developed went through multiple review cycles with increasingly detailed feedback. Messages that mentioned economic inequality were flagged as potentially divisive. Videos that included diverse perspectives on policy issues were marked for simplification. Content that encouraged critical thinking about government effectiveness was rejected as undermining institutional confidence. The breaking point came when we submitted a video series called Your Vote, Your Voice that featured young adults discussing issues they cared about and researching how different candidates addressed those concerns. The content was scrupulously nonpartisan. We showed people examining multiple viewpoints and making their own informed decisions. Mitchell's team rejected the entire series. The messaging is too scattered, their feedback stated. Voters need clear direction, not confusion. Please revise to focus on positive government initiatives that directly benefit young adults. I realized we were being asked to create marketing materials for the current administration disguised as civic engagement content. The $15 million wasn't payment for increasing democratic participation. It was payment for sophisticated voter manipulation. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with our senior team. I explained the situation honestly, including the financial implications of what I was considering. If we walk away from this contract, I told them, we'll have to lay off half our staff and probably lose our office lease. We've built our reputation on authentic community engagement, but this project is asking us to compromise everything we believe in. The discussion that followed lasted until nearly midnight. Some team members argued that we could find ways to work within the constraints while still providing value. Others felt that any association with manipulative government messaging would permanently damage our credibility. Jessica, who had been with me since the beginning, asked the question that clarified everything. If we take this money and create content we know is propaganda, how are we different from the agencies that prioritize profit over principles? The next morning, I called Deputy Director Mitchell and informed him that Authentic Impact Marketing was terminating our contract, effective immediately. His response was swift and concerning. "I'm disappointed in your decision, Marcus," he said. "I hope you understand that walking away from a commitment to the American people will be noted by other government agencies considering future partnerships." The implicit threat was clear. Refusing to comply would damage our reputation in Washington and potentially block us from future government work. 2 days later, the consequences began. A story appeared in Politico titled "Marketing Agency Abandons Youth Voter Outreach, Leaving Taxpayers on the Hook." The article presented our decision as unprofessional abandonment of an important civic mission, with quotes from unnamed sources describing our work as unfocused and our team as difficult to work with. Within a week, 3 major clients called to reassess their relationships with our agency. 2 corporate partnerships were quietly canceled. A nonprofit that had been planning a major campaign with us decided to explore other options. The character assassination was subtle but effective. We weren't being accused of wrongdoing, just incompetence and unreliability. For an agency built on trust and long-term relationships, the damage was potentially fatal. I watched our team's morale plummet as project after project disappeared. People who had joined us because they believed in mission-driven marketing started updating their LinkedIn profiles and scheduling interviews with other agencies. The lowest point came when Dr. Angela Richardson, the Phoenix school superintendent who had trusted us with their funding campaign, called to express concern about negative rumors she was hearing. "I'm not questioning your work," she said, "but my board is worried about association with agencies that have reputation problems." I realized that our principles, which had been our greatest strength, had become a liability in an industry where government connections often determine success. But something unexpected happened during those dark weeks. Support came from quarters I hadn't anticipated. Victoria Hartman, The CMO who had first encouraged me to enter the Golden Pixel Awards published a blog post titled "The Cost of Authentic Marketing" that detailed the pressures agencies faced to compromise their values for lucrative contracts. Without mentioning our situation directly, she argued that the industry needed more agencies willing to walk away from money when projects conflicted with ethical standards. Robert Torres from Desert Hope Foundation organized a public letter of support signed by 17 organizations we had worked with over the past 3 years. The letter praised our integrity and commitment to authentic community engagement, explicitly stating that our reputation for principled decision-making was precisely why they had chosen to work with us. Most surprisingly, I received a call from Sarah Mitchell at Meridian Creative Agency, the same person who had rejected my original job application years earlier. "I heard about your situation with the government contract," she said. "I wanted you to know that several of us in the industry respect what you did. We've all faced similar pressure to compromise our work for political or financial reasons. Most of us haven't had the courage to say no." She paused, then continued. "Meridian is launching a new division focused on social impact campaigns. We'd like to explore a partnership that would give you complete creative control, while providing the resources and protection of a larger organization." The offer was tempting but felt wrong for different reasons. Joining Meridian would solve our immediate financial problems, but it would also mean giving up the independence that made our authentic approach possible. Instead, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I decided to go public with our story. Working with Sandra Williams, our creative director, I produced a 15-minute documentary called "The Price of Authenticity" that detailed our experience with the government contract without revealing classified information or violating our confidentiality agreements. The film showed how agencies were pressured to blur the lines between legitimate marketing and propaganda, and why we had chosen to walk away from the most lucrative contract in our company's history. We released the documentary on our website and social media channels with no promotion budget and no media outreach. I expected it to be seen by a few hundred people in our professional network. Instead, it went viral. Within 72 hours, the documentary had been viewed over 800,000 times. Marketing publications picked up the story. Business schools began using it as a case study in ethical decision-making. Most importantly, dozens of organizations reached out wanting to work with an agency that would prioritize authentic messaging over financial gain. The backlash had become our biggest marketing success. 6 months later, Authentic Impact Marketing was busier than ever, working with clients who specifically sought us out because of our reputation for principled decision-making. We had doubled our staff and moved into a larger office. More importantly, we had attracted team members who shared our commitment to using marketing as a force for positive change. The crisis had taught me something crucial about success. Real strength comes not from avoiding difficult decisions, but from making the right ones even when they're costly. The Golden Pixel Award had given us recognition, but our willingness to sacrifice profit for principles had given us something more valuable: unshakable credibility with the communities we served. As I looked back on those challenging months, I realized they had been necessary. Success without testing creates confidence without foundation. Now we knew exactly who we were and what we stood for, not just when times were good, but when everything we had built was on the line. 5 years had passed since that night at the Century Plaza Hotel, and I was standing in front of 500 marketing professionals at the annual Digital Marketing Innovation Summit in Chicago. This time, I wasn't receiving an award. I was delivering the keynote address to an audience that included many of the same people who had once dismissed me as unqualified. The invitation to speak had come from an unexpected source: the Golden Pixel Foundation itself. They were launching a new initiative called Pathways to Excellence, designed to recognize and support unconventional talent in marketing. They wanted me to share insights about building authentic campaigns and navigating industry challenges without traditional credentials. As I looked out at the audience, I spotted familiar faces scattered throughout the auditorium. Victoria Hartman sat in the 3rd row, now serving on the Golden Pixel Foundation board. Dr. Angela Richardson had flown in from Phoenix, having become a national advocate for innovative public sector marketing. Even Sarah Mitchell from Meridian was there, taking notes as part of their social impact division development. But the moment that struck me most was seeing a young man in the back row furiously writing in a notebook, his intensity reminding me of myself at industry events years earlier. He looked out of place among the polished professionals, his enthusiasm barely contained as he absorbed every presentation. 7 years ago, I began, I was sitting where many of you are today, trying to figure out how to break into an industry that seemed designed to keep people like me on the outside. I didn't have the right degree, the right connections, or the right background. What I had was curiosity, determination, and a willingness to treat every campaign as if real people's lives depended on the results. I shared stories from our journey that I had never told publicly before. The sleepless nights spent learning skills that others had studied in formal programs, the rejection letters that forced me to find alternative paths to prove my value, the clients who took chances on unconventional approaches because traditional marketing had failed them. More importantly, I talked about what we had learned about authentic marketing that couldn't be taught in textbooks or case studies. Authentic marketing isn't a strategy or a tactic, I explained. It's a commitment to remembering that behind every metric is a human being making real decisions about things that matter to them. When you approach campaigns with genuine respect for the intelligence and dignity of your audience, everything else, the creativity, the strategy, the results, follows naturally. I detailed how this philosophy had guided our most successful campaigns. The Desert Hope project that had launched our reputation wasn't successful because of sophisticated targeting or clever copy. It worked because we had taken time to understand the real experiences of veterans and their families, then found ways to share those stories that honored their truth while inspiring community support. The Phoenix Schools campaign had succeeded not because we had hidden problems or exaggerated successes, but because we had trusted community members to make good decisions when given honest information about challenges and opportunities. Even our crisis with the government contract had ultimately strengthened our position because we had been willing to sacrifice short-term gain for long-term credibility. The marketing industry is at a crossroads, I continued. We can continue treating people as targets to be manipulated, or we can evolve toward an approach that serves human needs while achieving business objectives. The choice we make will determine whether marketing becomes a force for positive change or remains a source of public skepticism. During the Q&A session, questions came from marketing directors at Fortune 500 companies, agency founders, and recent graduates trying to navigate their early careers. Many wanted tactical advice about specific campaign challenges, but others asked deeper questions about building authentic relationships with communities and maintaining integrity in competitive markets. One question came from the young man I had noticed in the back row. He identified himself as David Park, a recent immigrant from South Korea who was working at a small digital marketing firm in Milwaukee while studying for his MBA part-time. "I have strong analytical skills and creative ideas," he said, "but I struggle with networking and industry connections because English isn't my first language, and I don't understand all the cultural references that seem important in client relationships. How do you overcome barriers that aren't about competence but about fitting into established professional networks?" His question reminded me so clearly of my own early struggles that I had to pause before responding. "The barriers you're describing are real," I said, "but they're also opportunities to bring perspectives that others miss." Some of our most successful campaigns have come from team members who saw solutions that weren't obvious to people who had grown up entirely within American marketing culture. I told him about Dr. James Kim, whose background in social psychology had helped us understand community dynamics that traditional marketers overlooked. About Sandra Williams, whose documentary experience had taught us storytelling techniques that advertising agencies rarely used. About Maria Santos, whose academic training in communications theory had helped us articulate approaches we had developed intuitively. Diversity isn't just politically correct hiring, I explained, it's a competitive advantage. The most effective marketing comes from teams that include people with different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, and different life experiences. Your perspective as someone navigating cultural differences gives you insights about human communication that people who have never faced those challenges simply can't access. After the session, David approached me with his portfolio. His work was impressive, campaigns for local businesses that showed sophisticated understanding of both data analysis and cultural sensitivity. More importantly, his case studies demonstrated the kind of attention to real human impact that our agency valued. "We're always looking for people who understand that marketing is ultimately about serving communities," I told him. "If you're interested in relocating to Phoenix, we'd like to talk." 6 months later, David joined Authentic Impact Marketing as a senior strategist. His first major project was developing a campaign for a coalition of community organizations serving immigrant families, work that drew directly on his personal understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing new Americans. The campaign's success led to consulting relationships with organizations in 7 other cities, each wanting to improve their outreach to diverse communities. David's unique background had become exactly the kind of specialized expertise that clients sought out specifically. His success reminded me of a truth I had learned repeatedly over the years. The qualities that make someone different from established professionals are often the same qualities that make them exceptionally valuable to clients facing complex challenges. As our agency continued growing, we had formalized this insight into our hiring practices. We actively sought team members with unconventional backgrounds, former teachers who understood learning psychology, social workers who knew community organizing, small business owners who had experienced marketing challenges firsthand. This approach had created a team culture that prized real-world impact over industry recognition. We celebrated campaigns that generated measurable improvements in people's lives, not just ones that won awards or generated media coverage. But we also discovered that focusing on authentic impact often led to both. Our work with rural healthcare systems had been featured in Harvard Business Review as a model for community-centered marketing. Our environmental campaigns had been studied by the United Nations as examples of effective climate communication. Our approach to nonprofit marketing had become required reading in several MBA programs. The recognition was gratifying, but what mattered more was the feedback from communities we served. Letters from veterans who had found stable employment through programs we had helped promote. Photos from schools that had been able to expand their arts programs because of successful funding campaigns. Stories from families whose lives had been improved by healthcare services they had discovered through our outreach efforts. These were the metrics that motivated our team and validated our approach. As I reflected on the journey from that rejected job application to building an agency that influenced industry practices, I realized the most important lesson wasn't about marketing techniques or business strategy. It was about the power of authentic commitment to serving others. Every successful campaign had started with the same question: how can we genuinely help the people we're trying to reach? When that question guided every decision from audience research to creative development to performance measurement, everything else fell into place. The kid who had mixed concrete and learned marketing from YouTube tutorials had built something that none of us could have imagined. Not just a successful business, but a demonstration that principled work could generate both financial success and positive social impact. Standing in that Chicago hotel, surrounded by colleagues who had become friends and team members who shared our mission, I felt grateful for every rejection and setback that had forced us to find better ways forward. The laughter from those who had dismissed my early applications had long since been replaced by respect for results that spoke for themselves. But more importantly, we had created space for others who didn't fit traditional molds to prove their own value through authentic work and genuine impact. The future of marketing would be shaped not by people with the best credentials, but by people with the clearest commitment to serving human needs. And that future looked brighter than any award ceremony could ever capture. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.